Okay, let's dive in. I was talking to a friend, Gwen, right? And she just blocked her ex-boss on everything, like a full block.
Oh, wow. Bold move.
Yeah. And she said afterwards it felt like walking out of prison and into a spa.
That's quite a description. Prison to spa. It really highlights that feeling of release, doesn't it?
Totally. And it got me thinking, why do we do that? Why do we get so caught up worrying about what other people think?
Well, it taps right into this thing called people pleasing. Gwen's feeling, that huge relief, it points to how common this is.
You mean like trying too hard to make everyone happy?
Exactly. And the stats are pretty telling. Something like 76% of adults admit they sacrifice their own happiness sometimes just to avoid negative judgment.
76%. That's huge. That's like 3 out of every 4 people you meet.
Right. Think about it. So many people navigating life trying not to get disapproved of.
Yeah, it really makes you pause. I know I've done it. I mean, sitting through movies I knew I'd hate.
Oh,
Or doing unpaid overtime because I didn't want to look like I wasn't pulling my weight.
uh-huh. The classic examples.
Even staying in relationships that were, well, clearly past their expiration date,
Huh.
just to avoid rocking the boat.
Mm-hmm. And those things, they range from, small stuff to really big life decisions that affect our well-being. It seems like we're almost wired to want that acceptance.
What if that's not the actual path to happiness, I mean?
Precisely. What if the real key isn't getting everyone to like you? What if it's actually about having the courage to be disliked?
Okay, now that's the core idea we want to dig into today. It's sparked by that book, The Courage to be Disliked, which is all based on Alfred Adler's psychology.
Yeah, it's a striking title, isn't it? Because normally we want to be liked.
Right. But trying to please absolutely everyone, it's just impossible. You could try to be the healthiest person ever, and someone will say you're too strict.
Or you have a treat, and someone else judges that. You can't win.
Exactly. It's a total paradox.
So the big question for you listening is, if you can't get universal approval, where do you find real happiness?
And that's where Adler comes in, right? That's our mission for this deep dive, figuring out how letting go of needing approval, embracing this courage to be disliked.
How that can actually lead to a more, authentic and satisfying life.
Okay, so let's get into Adler's perspective. Where does he say all this unhappiness comes from? Is it our childhoods, our past?
Well, this is where Adler was kind of revolutionary for his time. He argued that our psychological problems aren't really caused by past trauma holding us back.
Oh, not the past.
Not directly, no. He believed they stem more from our current relationships and, importantly, the goals we're pursuing right now.
Goals now.
Yeah, he called it teleology. It's the idea that our behavior isn't driven by past causes, but by present purposes, what we're trying to achieve or avoid today.
Okay, hang on, let me process that. So, like, if someone's really anxious about math, Adler would say it's not because they failed a test in 3rd grade.
Not necessarily because of it. The memory might be there, sure. But the anxiety now could be serving a current goal. Like maybe the goal is to avoid feeling incompetent today.
So the feeling, the anxiety, helps them achieve the goal of avoidance.
Exactly. The past failure becomes almost like an excuse, a justification for not trying now to protect themselves from potential failure in the present. It serves a purpose right now.
Wow, okay, that actually feels quite empowering.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, because it means we're not just, like, puppets controlled by everything that ever happened to us.
Precisely. If our actions now are driven by goals now,
And then?
well, we can choose different goals. We can choose different actions right now.
That's huge. We're not victims of our history.
That's the core message. Freedom, agency. If you've ever felt stuck because of something in your past, Adler's view offers a way out. You can steer the ship now.
Okay. And speaking of feeling stuck, or maybe inadequate, let's talk about comparing ourselves to others. And that lovely feeling, imposter syndrome.
Ah, yes, the classics.
Because I'll admit, when we first started this, I definitely had those moments, wondering, is anyone actually going to care what I think? Is this any good?
It's so common, isn't it?
Yeah.
And those feelings, that inadequacy, the fraud feeling, they often pop up when we compare our messy insides to everyone else's polished outside.
Right. Like on social media, everyone looks perfect.
Exactly. And we look at that, and suddenly our own stuff feels less than. We get disconnected from our own value.
It's like we're constantly measuring ourselves against some impossible standard, and when we feel like we fall short, boom, the imposter voice starts whispering.
You don't belong here. You're faking it.
Yeah. And the more we chase external validation, the likes, the positive comments, the praise, the less we actually see our own inherent worth.
And Adler would connect this back to our early lives. As babies, We need approval for survival, right?
Uh-huh. Makes sense.
But that pattern, seeking approval, it can become this lifelong habit that actually limits us as adults. We keep looking outside for confirmation.
Oh, man. This reminds me of something embarrassing. In high school, I wore fake glasses for like a whole year
You wore fake glasses. Why?
to look smarter. Seriously, I thought it made me look more intellectual or something.
Oh, dear.
And then people got used to them, so if I didn't wear them, they'd be like, oh, you look weird. So I felt trapped. I actually walked into a tree once because they weren't prescription.
Okay, walking into a tree is commitment, but that's a perfect example of what Adler talked about, that feeling of inferiority.
Definitely felt inferior.
And then the overcompensation, trying to cover up the insecurity instead of just accepting it, and basing your self-image on what other people thought about your glasses, your intelligence.
Yeah, it made me feel really shaky depending on their reactions. It's exhausting. It feels like you're living out someone else's script for your life.
Exactly, like
Yeah.
your friend who became a doctor for his parents.
Yeah. He's got the big house, the fancy car, looks successful. But he tells me he feels like a robot. No passion, just going through the motions.
That's such a powerful illustration of the danger, right? Living by external expectations instead of your own values. Adler had these 3 tasks of life: work, friendship, and love.
Okay, work, friendship, love.
And he believed real fulfillment comes when we freely choose how we engage in those areas, based on what genuinely matters to us. So you have to ask yourself, are your choices yours? Or are they for someone else?
That's a heavy question. So, if we're supposed to stop chasing approval all the time, what's the alternative? What should we focus on?
Well, Adler suggested that in our interactions, we basically have 2 main motivations driving us.
Two. Okay.
Either we're seeking approval or we're aiming to make a contribution.
Approval versus contribution.
Right, and the key insight is, if you're constantly chasing approval, you're almost setting yourself up for unhappiness because you're living for other people's expectations.
Your sense of self is always depending on someone else.
Exactly, it's fragile.
Yeah.
Always shifting based on their opinions. You don't have that solid inner compass.
It does feel like being an actor sometimes, trying to get the lines right for everyone else. I remember feeling like my happiness was totally in other people's hands. Their mood decided my worth for the day.
And that's where this idea of emotional tasks is so crucial.
Emotional tasks.
Yeah, basically how other people feel. That's their task, their responsibility, not yours.
So if someone gets upset by a choice I make, that's their emotion to handle.
Pretty much. Trying to constantly manage or fix how others feel. It's draining for you, first off, but it also stops them from growing. And it can build up resentment,
Yeah.
lead to really unhealthy dynamics.
Oh, I can relate to that. Definitely. Trying to please a partner, thinking if I just did everything perfectly, they'd be happy, we'd be happy.
Right. And what happens?
I completely lost myself in the process, forgot what I even wanted or needed.
It becomes this win-lose game, doesn't it? Instead of a partnership. And often we get stuck replaying old fights or worrying about future reactions.
Yeah, not living in the present at all.
Exactly. Adler really pushed for living in the here and now. We're not chained to past arguments. We can choose how we respond right now. And part of that is letting go of those secret expectations we have.
Secret expectations.
Where we think, if I do this nice thing, they should react this way, but we never actually say it out loud.
Ah, right, the unspoken rules.
And then when they don't react how we expected, we feel hurt or disappointed, even though they never agreed to that rule in the first place.
That makes so much sense. For me, a big shift happened when I realized trying to be liked by everyone was just impossible and exhausting.
Yeah. What changed?
It sounds simple, but I started focusing less on being liked and more on just trying to be helpful.
Ah, the contribution piece. That's a huge shift.
Yeah.
Moving from needing external validation to focusing on your internal values. That sounds very Adlerian.
Maybe. I remember when we started this, I was obsessed with the listener numbers, like constantly checking.
Refresh.
Right.
That very human need for feedback.
Totally. And worrying if I sounded okay, if I was saying things right.
Wondering if your delivery was off, as you put it.
Hey, I prefer distinctive. But yeah, it was draining. Then I read about Dr. Jennifer Crocker's research about how focusing on contribution rather than validation actually lowers anxiety and increases connection.
Oh.
And it was clicked.
That makes sense. If you stop worrying about what people think of you and start thinking about what you can offer them.
Life just feels lighter. You're focused on giving value, not proving your own. It feels more internally driven.
Exactly. Now, when you approach these deep dives, the question is more like, will this actually help our listeners?
Right. It changes the whole motivation. It's not about me getting approved of, it's about hopefully offering something useful.
Adler would love that.
Yeah.
He basically said most relationship problems come down to that choice.
Yeah.
Are we competing or are we contributing?
Like shifting from a battle to, I don't know, a team adventure.
That's a great way to put it. From a fighting game to a
Yeah.
co-op.
Okay, so this leads nicely into something practical for you listening. A little challenge. The 7-day Live Your Values challenge.
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
The idea is each day you pick one of your core values. Maybe it's honesty, maybe kindness, maybe creativity, whatever feels true for you.
Okay.
And then you just consciously try to act on that value in small ways throughout the day.
Can you give an example? Like, how did it work for you?
Well, I tried it recently. I picked 5 values.
Yeah.
And one day, the focus was kindness. It was boiling hot outside, and I really wanted a bubble tea.
Uh-huh.
But instead, I went out of my way to buy one for a friend, even though I was melting and just wanted to drink it myself.
Ah, that's true. Kindness, bubble tea, sacrifice. But it's in those little choices, isn't it? When your actions actually line up with what you say matters to you, that feels good.
It really does. It feels authentic. And if you're listening and thinking, what are my core values? A good question to ask is, when do I feel most alive? What really energizes me?
That's a great starting point. The answers often point straight to your values. And it all connects back to this fundamental idea. Your worth isn't based on your achievements or what other people think. It's just inherent.
That is such an important reminder, especially now with social media constantly pushing this idea of perfection.
Right. The curated feeds, the pressure for likes.
I used to be terrible with that, even with our recordings. I'd spend ages editing out every single tiny, or
Because you thought any imperfection meant.
Why? That people would think we weren't credible or professional or something, that they just dismiss us. Classic inferiority complex stuff, trying to overcompensate.
But that chase for perfection, it often stops us from actually connecting or even just enjoying things. We can still be valuable. We can still contribute, even with our ums and ahs and imperfections.
Maybe because of them, they make us human.
Exactly. Our flaws are part of us. Your worth isn't something you have to prove. It just is. And when you start to connect with that, you can live more authentically, even if not everyone likes it, even if you mess up sometimes.
And hey, if you stuck with us this far into the deep dive, you're clearly interested in this stuff, in this journey. So wherever you are listening, just remember, you don't need to be someone else. Just be you.
Absolutely. And you don't have to have it all figured out to make a contribution. You can still offer value while you're learning and growing.
Okay, so before we wrap up, let's quickly recap some of those keywords we've been throwing around. First, approval.
Right. That's basically someone saying yes to what you do or believe. Like getting good reviews for a book.
Then value. That's about what's important to you, like honesty or maybe compassion being a guiding principle in your life.
Next, contribution. That's what you give or offer that's helpful. Sharing your knowledge, helping a friend move house.
Your time, your support.
Okay.
There. Expectation.
That's what people think should happen or what they want you to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes those expectations feel heavy or just wrong for you.
Yeah. And finally, imperfect.
Meaning not perfect, which, as we've said, is totally okay. It's just part of being human.
Definitely. Okay, now a couple questions for you to think about, just for yourself. First, can you think of one time you did something mainly to get someone's approval, even if it didn't really make you happy?
That requires some honest reflection.
And second, what's one core value you want to try and live by more consciously, maybe starting this week?
Take a moment with those. It's worth considering.
For me, that approval one, definitely signing up for advanced physics in college to impress someone, absolute misery for me.
Oh, dear. Physics for love.
Never again. And a value I want to live more, probably vulnerability, trying to be more open even when it feels scary.
That's a good one. For me, approval. Maybe agreeing to lead a committee I had zero passion for, just because I didn't want to let people down.
Been there.
And a value to live more. Authenticity, just showing up as I am, even if it causes a bit of friction sometimes.
So bringing it all together, what's the secret of true happiness we've sort of landed on today?
Well, it seems to boil down to having that courage. The courage to be disliked.
To live authentically by your own values, even when it's tough.
Yeah, and shifting your focus away from constantly seeking approval.
And towards making a contribution, offering value.
And the paradox is, that's often when the real connections happen. Not when we're trying desperately to impress, but when we just show up as ourselves, imperfections and all.
So the final thought maybe is go live by your values. Be brave enough to be real.
And if someone else doesn't like it, remember whose emotional task that is.
Right. It's theirs, not yours.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. If any of this resonated, maybe share it with someone else who could use a little encouragement to be themselves.
And if it didn't quite land for you, that's okay too. We appreciate you listening either way.
Definitely. We'll catch you on the next exploration.